This episode contains language that may not be suitable for all listeners.
Previously on Sugarland.
Fort Bend ISD officials say it's still too early to know just who is buried here, but the Sugarland man says he believes he knows, and he says it's something he's been working to get acknowledged for nearly 20 years.
I recently served on your task force with regards to the Sugarland 95. I resigned last week because it appeared that the task force had been formed only to rubber stamp what the city and Fort Bend ISD had already agreed to.
There just comes a point where as a leader, you got to say, this is what we're doing and this is why.
I don't think he expected them to go through with it. And it just, the futility of what can we do about it?
I could see him, I don't want to say not caring, but letting his health slide.
On New Year's Day in 2019, Reginald Moore received a message from God in the form of a petite Asian graduate student named Hannah Kim. She'd been researching scholarship opportunities over winter break when she came across a fellowship she was immediately drawn to, but not necessarily for herself.
It was a 18-month-long fellowship, and it had a really big stipend. And somehow I was like, wasn't there a guy who was trying to shine light on this history of convict leasing? Somewhere I read about this. I feel like he would be a perfect candidate.
Despite not knowing Reggie and having no affiliation with the fellowship in question, Hannah was determined to tell him about it. She got his contact info from a journalist who'd recently interviewed him about the Sugarland 95 and called him.
I was like, I come bearing good news. I think you would be perfect for this. And he said, Dr. Hannah? I'm like, not a doctor at all. He's like, I've been praying for someone to help me write a book. And I've been praying for a long time. And you sound like you're the perfect person to be able to do this. And he said, I would like to do this fellowship together with you.
Theirs was an unlikely pairing. Hannah, a graphic designer, was finishing up her MA at the Harvard Graduate School of Design, and Reggie was right in the middle of the fight over how to memorialize the Sugarland 95. But it just worked.
If you just saw me and him walking down the street together, you'd be like, why are they together? It's like, I'm this petite Asian woman, and he's like a towering teddy bear, big mountain, giant. He has such a presence, and honestly, I respected him, and I was also intimidated by him just because of his stature and just the way that he communicates himself. But he was very, very kind to me.
The two became fast friends. Hannah flew to Houston, and Reggie took her on a personal tour around Sugarland. They traveled to New York to interview for the fellowship, and in March of 2019, Hannah arranged for Reggie to give a talk at Harvard's Hutchins Center for African and African American Research.
Sugarland has a dirty little secret, and it ain't sweet. It ain't sweet at all, okay? And we, the people of America, we don't want to talk about it.
That's honestly one of the most proud things that I have done at Harvard. Studies are great, but really seeing Mr. Moore at the auditorium, it was just such a fulfilling moment for me.
He wore a black Harvard baseball cap and a crimson and gray striped scarf with the school's iconic H's embroidered on both ends.
I own no Harvard gear, and he was buying all these things. He was like a kid, just being so excited and so eager to share his story with people.
We all have something to print about. We all have our prejudices and biases, and we're hoping that America heal. America needs healing. She's in bad shape right now. I believe she's on life support.
He made this trip just after Fort Bend ISD announced it would change the design of its new school, the James Reese Career and Technical Center, and allow the bodies of the Sugarland 95 to be reburied where they were found.
We're playing this for you now precisely because it came at such a high point for Reggie. We wanted you to hear him at his best, his most hopeful.
I love America, but I'm not proud of the things that she's done or that she's doing.
Because from here, things started to go downhill, fast.
Do we have the courage to hold America accountable? Dr. King says there's going to be people guilty of doing wrong. There's going to be also people guilty of doing nothing. Are we complacent? Are we freedom fighters?
This is part 4 of Sugarland, an investigative podcast series presented by the Texas Newsroom. We're your hosts, Brittany Martin
and Naomi Reed.
The remains of the Sugarland 95 were reburied in the last week of November 2019, almost 2 years after they were first discovered. And while Reggie was glad the school district had decided not to build over their graves, he wasn't happy they still hadn't been identified, that their descendants were still in the dark. And he wasn't happy the district was unilaterally making all the decisions about how they were memorialized.
He would get so frustrated and be angry because people didn't do what he thought they should do, of course. It seemed to be overwhelming to him.
This is Reggie's wife, Marilyn.
I would tell him that you can't carry the whole world on your shoulders.
By this point, Reggie was feeling burnt out, and he wasn't the only one. Sam Collins also served on the city's task force, and he was sick of feeling gaslit. He said there's a big difference between having a seat at the table and having a voice at the table.
No, it's very frustrating, and it's draining. I have my personal business, I have my family, I have many other projects I was in, and at some point I had to tap out because I saw, okay, you're going to do what you want to do, and you're going to continue to lie, and you're going to continue to go in this direction, and you have no intention of doing the right things. So I'll do the work I can from a distance, and if Mr. Moore or Jay or somebody called me, I tried to go and participate on some panels. If I could get them some information, I tried to get it to them. But driving up there and sitting in a meeting, taking a vote, and they come back and say, oh, well, we're still going to go in this other direction. Well, what do we vote for? What are we talking about?
He knows how important it is to fight the fight, but it was getting to him.
And every fight is not a knockdown, brawl out. Some of the fights are silent fights that people will never hear about and behind the scenes, but it still wears on you.
And it wasn't just the fighting. Spending that much time thinking and talking about convict leasing takes its own toll.
Sometime when I'm reading some of this history, I just have to put the book down and stop, because the psychological damage that it does to people that are constantly in this battle. I mentioned something to my wife the other day, that even psychiatrists that listen to the problems of others, man, they take in a lot of trauma. While you try to be a robot and it doesn't affect me, that's just not true. As a human being, it affects you.
And even from a distance, Sam could see the toll the fight had taken on Reggie.
It's like a constant dripping that breaks you too over time. And again, that additional stress affected his health. And the work of many activists, their physical health, their mental health, it suffers from having to do the work.
As 2020 began, Reggie started feeling the weight of his years of activism. Here's his friend Jay Jenkins.
We were trying to think of ways to, continue the fight. But I could just tell when I talked to him that he was getting weaker.
In addition to the emotional toll his work with the Sugarland 95 had taken, Reggie was battling congestive heart failure. Marilyn says it started in 2017.
He was having shortness of breath, and on the day that he was diagnosed, he got up to go to the restroom and he had to hold on to the mantle. So I said, do you want to go to the doctor? And when he said yes, I knew he was really feeling bad.
They headed to a pulmonary specialist to get his lungs checked out.
He examined him and told him that it wasn't his lungs, that it was his heart. And so he told him he had to go to the hospital that day.
Essentially, his heart wasn't pumping the way it was supposed to. And when your blood isn't being circulated in the exact right way, your other organs notice. Your heart may get bigger, your lungs fill with fluid, and your kidneys retain water.
The other things that he complained about in retrospect, his socks were too tight. Now I know.
The fluid retention had caused his legs and feet to swell.
It looked like memory foam. How it stays down for a while. It didn't bounce back right away.
During his first hospital stay in 2017, his doctor recommended he have a type of pacemaker implanted in his chest that would help his heart beat more effectively. But
from day one, I'm not having surgery. And everybody's telling him, you need to have the surgery. But he didn't want to do that.
instead, he started seeing a cardiologist who put him on a strict plant-based diet, which Marilyn was shocked he agreed to.
As well, because he loved to eat and eat a lot.
But he actually managed to stick to it.
When I met Reggie, he was like big and unhealthy. And in the couple years that I knew, he got healthier. He started eating vegan. He lost a bunch of weight.
This put Reggie in a pretty good place health-wise throughout the Sugarland 95 discovery and the fight over what to do with their remains. But after 3 good years, he was struggling again.
And again, the same scenario. The shortness of breath, the weakness.
He was hospitalized in March of 2020. Jay and Jay's wife Whitney went to see him.
It was like a week before everything locked down for the pandemic. Reggie, who was being treated for congestive heart failure, had convinced the nurse to get him a fried egg for breakfast. And Marilyn was not happy with that. But that was the last time I saw him.
It was a week every Houstonian remembers. Unbeknownst to us, COVID-19 had already been spreading throughout the community for a while, but it got real the day the mayor canceled the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo.
And for Houston, that's a big deal. As everything was shutting down, Reggie was returning home from nearly a week in the hospital. He called Jay right away.
Hey, Jay. Hey, man. Just Reg giving you a call. Want to let you know you and Whitney that I made it here today, made it home. And so just resting, recuperating. Got to see my doctor early in the morning for follow-up. And so much, much better. And hoping to stay focused and follow through, you know, on everything with that vegan and everything I'm learning and growing from to make sure everything's in place, man. And I love y'all's support, you know, and y'all just wonderful people, man. You really helped uplift me in there, which you always do. But y'all are just incredible. So I just wanted to let you know that, brother. Thank you so much.
He was going to the doctor almost every day for treatment, but was determined to keep working too. He and Hannah Kim had gotten the Soros Equality Fellowship they'd applied for, and Hannah moved to Houston after she graduated to work with him.
When I thought about doing fellowship with Mr. Moore, is that I would go there and we would look through books or source things together and, have fun. It wasn't like that at all. He basically had everything in his head. He's a walking library.
They fell into a routine. They'd have these long conversations at his house or on the phone. Then Hannah would go off on her own and illustrate the information Reggie was sharing with her.
Him being on the phone was getting harder and harder, because he used to just easily talk for an hour, but he used to just be like, Hannah, I can't talk anymore. I'm getting, out of breath. So let's talk later.
They were working on the book Reggie had long envisioned. They designed it with younger readers in mind, creatively merging an academic research paper with an elevated comic strip, which features a black man named George who's freed from slavery only to be arrested and forced to harvest cane in Sugarland. Reggie really wanted it to be published online by Juneteenth.
The only time that he kind of was stern with me was when I was working on the book. He was feeling ill, and I wasn't sure how severe his condition was. And I was also getting really stressed out because COVID and all these other things. I was just telling him, Mr. Moore, can I have a little bit more time and launch this book and everything after Juneteenth? And he was just no, Hannah, we really have to do this. And I really hope you can do this. So I was okay, I'm going to try.
She didn't sleep much for the week leading up to Juneteenth, but she managed to get it done. And Reggie was so pleased.
That evening, Rice University's School of Humanities and Fondren Library honored Reggie by introducing 2 internships and a grant in his name. During the virtual ceremony, Jay noticed Marilyn had to help Reggie over to the computer. For the first time, it occurred to him that his friend might not be getting better.
I still didn't expect it, but like I could tell it was a little bit worse than my impression, just because I was always talking to him in the morning and the nights were tougher for him.
Soon after that, Reggie was back in the hospital. He was scheduled to have surgery to relieve some of the pressure on his heart. But remember, this was peak COVID times, so Marilyn wasn't allowed to stay with him, and Reggie still didn't have a cell phone.
He was using the nurse's cell phone. I mean, it was horrible.
When Marilyn still hadn't heard from him around 3 on the day he was supposed to have his procedure, she called the hospital and spoke to a nurse.
She asked me, "Are you in the hospital?" I said, "No." And then she said, "How soon can you get here?" And it still wasn't clicking. None of this was clicking to me.
She was excited. She thought she was going to be let in to visit him, so she started getting ready to make the half-hour drive to the medical center from her home near Sugar Land.
And then the doctor calls and tells me, "Well, he's at the end." I'm saying, "What?"
Marilyn was shocked. They hadn't even done the procedure because Reggie's heart was too weak.
And I'm still kind of upset about that the doctor didn't tell me what was going on. I don't know if Reggie told him not to tell me.
She'd heard the doctor say Reggie was nearing the end of his life, but she didn't know what that actually meant. Did he have days, weeks, hours?
She called her son to pick her up. Then she called Reggie's siblings and his son.
Then when I got there, I saw all these tubes and stuff. I'm saying, "Oh my God." And he's not talking. He can't, he's out.
She didn't know what she expected to see, but it wasn't that. The doctor told her a machine was helping Reggie breathe and that he wouldn't wake up. His doctor suggested ending life support that day. But Marilyn asked them to wait for his son to get there. He was 8 hours away.
The next day was July 3rd. Family gathered around Reggie to say goodbye. Then the doctors removed his breathing tube.
I had told the nurse, I said, "When he gets near the end, I don't want to be there when he takes his last breath." So I stayed in there for a while and talked to him for a while. And then I could even tell that his breath was, I said, "I think I'm going to go ahead and go."
Within the hour, Marilyn had lost her husband, Jay and Hannah had lost their friend, and the victims of the convict lease system had lost their biggest advocate.
Reggie's funeral was held 10 days after his death in Sugar Land. During the service, Hannah read Robert Hayden's poem, Frederick Douglass. Its final lines make for a beautiful and fitting tribute.
This man, superb in love and logic, this man shall be remembered. Oh, not with statues' rhetoric, not with legends and poems and wreaths of bronze alone, but with the lives grown out of his life, the lives fleshing his dream of the beautiful, needful thing.
After he was gone, she was grateful for the pressure Reggie put on her to finish their book.
It was like a ton of bricks, because if he had let me take more time, he wouldn't have seen this hard work before he passed. So I was just like, thank God that I pushed myself and produced this thing with Mr. Moore and helped him once again feel like he's being seen and his work is being honored.
Marilyn and his community immediately felt his absence.
Without Reggie, people were lost on what to do next.
Including Jay. He wanted to continue Reggie's work, but losing Reggie's commanding voice and tenacity was a massive blow to their cause.
He, really became like family in some ways. When we got married, it was Reggie presiding and Marilyn was there and our parents were there, and that was it.
Jay became really protective of Reggie's legacy.
The story of Reggie, the way some people tell it, is just like, oh, this annoying person got lucky on a guess they were making. but it was like so much more than that.
Jay said Reggie was never satisfied with simply being right. He was always grasping for more.
More recognition of the oppressive convict leasing system, of how its ripple effects were still being felt today.
He wanted more action taken to repair the damage done, more efforts to honor these men and their memories.
Meryl and I would talk on the phone, and I would just cry and cry and cry. And I was trying to describe, like, he could have had a lot of stuff in his name, and he took on this second fight because he thought it was right.
It's not that Reggie was too proud to be celebrated, but he wasn't interested in patting himself on the back before the job was done. He thought, how could we start to make amends to the Sugarland 95 and their descendants if we still didn't know who they were?
And like, that's the first time that I've seen that in person, where someone who deserved so much was willing to sacrifice that for this larger cause. And that's some deep, like when I remember talking to Marilyn, I was like, it's not like Jesus, but it's kind of like Jesus, what Jesus did, where it was just like, you gave up everything in order to take on a fight for someone else.
It's a fitting comparison. Reggie's activism was always rooted in spirituality.
As I flipped through his archives at Rice, his prayer journals were mixed in with all the newspaper clippings and letters he'd saved.
He said that God had revealed to him that he would be able to get him into places that other people could not. So he did that.
And now Marilyn was carrying on his work too.
Most of the time, I feel like I'm a fish out of water.
She didn't engage much in Reggie's activism when he was alive, but now she always shows up.
I've told whoever is working on Sugarland 95 that whatever you have, invite me, I will come, because I don't want Reggie's name to be left out of history.
Marilyn was there in February 2022 when Fort Bend ISD erected a Sugarland 95 exhibit at the James Reese Career and Technical Center. She attended presentations by the archaeologists and community meetings with architects. She still engages every chance she gets.
But not all of Reggie's friends and fellow activists have taken that approach. For some, it feels like Reggie's been reduced to a kind of mascot for the Sugarland 95, rather than the multidimensional figure he was.
Yeah, and we've seen that too.
Every time we go to one of these Sugarland 95 memorial events or we watch a news segment about the cemetery, we hear his name. He's always on the list of talking points and honorees.
We were dedicated to working with him in partnership, and his loss is significant.
This is former Fort Bend ISD Superintendent Charles Dupree talking about Reggie during a TV news interview that aired a few months after he died.
It's sad that he passed when he did. Was not able to see this come to full closure, but his efforts and everything he put into this will always be remembered, will always be a part of the Sugar 95 story.
Those who knew Reggie and fought alongside him get frustrated by how often his name is thrown around by the very same people who refused to listen to him when he was alive.
Oh yeah, they act like he's the hero and they loved him, and that's not what happened.
That's Sam Collins again.
I mean, chasing him off with campus police, I think that was one of the things that kind of pushed him over the edge, and that's really, really unfortunate.
Jay, in particular, harbors a lot of resentment against the school district and the archaeological team they put in charge of researching the cemetery.
I'm angriest about the way they treated Reggie, and I'm angriest about them putting his name in their mouth really in any way, shape, or form. But particularly when they're avoiding doing the things that he asked for. And that part is something that I don't know that I'll ever let go of.
As you've heard throughout this series, Reggie had a long list of demands. A memorial, a museum, archaeological studies, reparations. And perhaps above all, he wanted to see the Sugarland 95 identified, to see their humanity restored.
I know that it would be easier if I could just let it go and move on and not deal with the stress of having, 40 people call me every time the school district gets a story in the paper and ask me like, oh, is this good? And then I got to be the person that's like, no, it's not good. They're still not DNA testing. They're still not willing to do that.
So we wondered, what exactly was the holdup?
We didn't find out until about 2 months after Reggie's death, and 2.5 years after the cemetery was first discovered, when the archaeologists published a report on Fort Bend ISD's website detailing all their research and findings regarding the Sugarland 95.
Calling it a report is almost misleading. It's a volume. I had it printed and bound. It's 535 pages long and full of details about the soil stratigraphy, dental caries, and the different kinds of trash they found on the site, which all sort of went in one ear and out the other.
Marilyn joked that Reggie would have broken their home printer trying to print it all out.
You would have read the whole thing.
Naomi and I actually did end up reading the whole thing. It was a slog and took us both a few weeks.
But in between descriptions of clay and an entire history of the African slave trade, the report contained some really crucial information we were hearing for the very first time.
For example, bone samples collected from the graves of the Sugarland 95 had already been sent out for DNA analysis. They were, at that very moment, sitting in a lab in Connecticut. Way back in the summer of 2018, just a few months after the cemetery was first discovered, the school district's archaeologists contacted Deborah Bolnick, an anthropology professor who was working with ancient DNA at the University of Texas at Austin.
At the time, I think we were really the only group in Texas that was focusing on questions looking at ancient DNA from human ancestors.
That's Deborah. She told us ancient DNA is basically what it sounds like. Old DNA that's started to break down. When you picture DNA, you probably think of the iconic double helix structure that looks like a twisted ladder.
After an individual dies, that structure is no longer being maintained intact by the body. And so that double helix structure can get fragmented. Instead of having one long string, you would have a bunch of short pieces.
Because ancient DNA is in this weakened form, researchers like Deborah have to work in super sterile labs. And at the time, she says there weren't many of those in Texas. When the archaeologists reached out, Deborah asked a graduate student she was mentoring if she had any interest in spearheading the project. Her name is Samantha Archer.
I was like, you've got to be shitting me. That is my absolute dream. To be able to bring at least like a little bit more of a story and a breadth of what happened here to our history books and to families and people who have these big gaps in their own history. To do just like a little bit to add back to that is, I literally like couldn't think of a better way to spend my graduate career.
So yeah, Sam was definitely interested. But she and Deborah were both getting ready to move. Deborah had just accepted a new job at the University of Connecticut, and Sam was starting her PhD there in the fall of 2018.
So they took the project with them.
If you're surprised to hear there'd been a deal worked out to do the DNA analysis since the fall of 2018, you're not alone. All we knew coming into this was that the DNA analysis hadn't been done yet. We only learned about Sam and Deborah's involvement when we read the report.
That's because most of this DNA conversation played out behind the scenes while all the drama with the school district was unfolding. Remember that first task force meeting back in September 2018? Archaeologist Rain Clark told the group that testing the DNA would require removing teeth and bone fragments from each of the graves and destroying them. That turned the DNA issue into a legal hot potato. Literally. The emails and letters from this time show the school district, the historical commission, and the archaeologists just like passing the responsibility back and forth.
Bill Martin, a reviewer at the Texas Historical Commission, told Rain at the time that a superior had decided, quote, "We should simply say that we have no objection to DNA analysis rather than we will grant permission. The effect should be the same for you, but if anyone ever decides that we don't have the authority to grant permission, it could keep us out of a legal bind."
But Fort Bend ISD was not about to be the one left holding the bag. Their lawyer sent Rain a letter telling him in no uncertain terms that they did not authorize him to do the analysis. Finally, the the Texas Historical Commission stepped up and asked the Attorney General of Texas if they had the authority to grant this kind of permission.
And 6 months later, the Attorney General's office said yes.
So, in the summer of 2019, Rain and his team collected teeth and bone material from each of the skeletons. And by November, the same month the rest of the remains were being reburied at the James Reese Career and Technical Center, the samples arrived at UConn, where Deborah and Sam were setting up their new ancient DNA lab.
The physical lab space wasn't built at UConn until September of 2019. So that whole fall, we were outfitting the lab, getting all the equipment, getting it geared up. And then, we came back from winter break. I spent part of January and February getting everything ready. And then we all know what happened.
COVID. The university and its labs shut down.
I really was a week or two away from really starting.
Even after COVID precautions lifted and things started to reopen, Deborah said they still couldn't begin the DNA extractions.
Much of the work that we do requires specialized PPE because we want to ensure that we're not depositing our own DNA on samples. And much of what we wear is the same that healthcare workers use. And so we made the decision when the pandemic started to donate all of our PPE supplies in the lab to local hospitals when there were drastic shortages in supplies. But then it meant that we didn't have those supplies once the university started to reopen.
So when the big report came out, Sam still hadn't begun extracting DNA from the samples. But there was a plan, and that was way more than we knew before seeing the report.
Besides the DNA, perhaps the most important piece of new information in the report shows up about halfway through. It's a list of 72 names of convicts who might be buried at the cemetery. You may remember us mentioning that archaeologist Rain Clark knew some of these names during Fort Bend ISD's court proceedings.
We have been finding specific information about those that died at Ellis Camp Number 1. And at this point, we have 6 individuals by name, and we have a lot of information about those individuals.
Rain's comments were a part of what led Judge James H. Shoemake to question whether or not the district had really exhausted every available option to find and consult with relatives of the 95. The attorney Shoemake appointed to look into the case requested these names, along with any other potentially identifying information. But Fort Bend ISD didn't provide those names.
By the time the report came out, it was August 2020. The bodies had already been exhumed, studied, photographed, and reburied. The James Reese Career and Technical Center had already been open for over a year, and this was the first time any names had been released. For those who had been paying attention, like Sam Collins, this came as a surprise.
What was surprising is that the 500-page report that they put out shows they had access to a great deal more information than they had been sharing with us.
You'll recall that Sam Collins sat on the task force with Reggie and attended those hearings in Judge Shoemake's court. All along, he'd heard school district officials argue that they should be allowed to make the decisions about the Sugar Land 95 because there was no way to know who they were and no way to track down and consult their descendants. But then they published this report saying they do know who the 95 were, or at least who they could be.
Honestly, this was a turning point for both of us.
Yeah, it seemed like such a massive contradiction that we really weren't sure what we could believe.
We talked a lot.
And read a lot.
And ultimately, we decided we needed to find out for ourselves what was true.
Was it possible to track down descendants using the information the school district and their researchers had at the time? Was the history presented in the report the full and complete picture of what happened here?
Next time on Sugarland, we dig in.
I don't think the school district is authorized to spend money doing DNA matches on bodies found on their property.
Fort Bend ISD was not funding it, but we believe that this part of the project was that important that we took it on ourselves to pursue it.
What we've done so far is we've taken the names of the 72 that we've identified who have died at that camp, and we've started creating family trees for them on familysearch.org.
It's really only after you've gathered every census and every possible vital record for somebody that you can look at the whole picture and you say, well, what conclusions can we draw from this body of evidence?
I've lived long enough, Brittany, to learn that life works in mysterious ways. You know, this universe we live in, and so everything happens for a reason. And this was something I needed to know about.
Sugarland is a production of the Texas Newsroom and was completed with the support of a grant from Columbia University's Ira A. Littman Center for Journalism and Civil and Human Rights, with funding provided by Arnold Ventures, and a grant from the Convict Leasing and Labor Project. Sugarland is written and reported by Brittany Martin and Naomi Reed. Our editor is Rachel Osier Lindley. Engineering and sound design by Jacob Rosati. Fact-checking by Billy Brennan. Audio editing by Bennett Smith. Music by Jerron Marshall. Recording engineering by Jake Perlman. Production help from Rafa Fariha. The Texas Newsroom is a public radio journalism collaboration that includes NPR, KERA in North Texas, Houston Public Media, KUT in Austin, Texas Public Radio in San Antonio, and other stations across the state. Corey McLagan is the statewide managing editor. The Texas Newsroom received support for Sugarland from Frontline's Local Journalism Initiative, which is funded by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Visit sugarlandpodcast.com to learn more about everything we discuss in this series.